Hey there, welcome to the Astro Psyche. This video is about Venus retrograde in Leo from July through September of 2023. So we'll talk about what Venus symbolizes in astrology as a planet, the significance of the retrograde, and how to bring this more personally into your life and to understand what this retrograde may look like for you, and ideally how to work with this energy in a way that that feels good, that's life inducing. My name is Shauna McGrath. I'm a psychotherapist and astrologer, and I'm really excited to share this Venus retrograde video, this information with you. So, Venus will station retrograde in Leo from July 22nd, and it will be retrograde through to September 3rd of 2023. So this is happening entirely in the sign of Leo. Venus stations retrograde at 28 degrees of Leo, so pretty close to the end of the sign, and then it will move backward or appear to move backward to about 12 degrees of Leo. So first, I want to talk about what a retrograde is and what Venus is. A retrograde is simply a fancy astrological term for a period of time when a planet appears to move backward through the zodiac from our perspective here on Earth. So all of the planets have the visible planets. We can see them move through this arc of the sky, and they do this consistently in cycles. And the planets that are Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, we can see periods of time where they appear to pause momentarily. That's the retrograde station. And then they sort of appear to move backwards over an area which they've already moved along. And so we take this symbolically. We take everything in astrology through a symbolic lens to help us relate and understand what we're seeing externally, if we symbolize that, what that may mean for us here in our lives. And so a retrograde is a process of internalization, moving backward, looking backward, going back over something that we have, going back over ground where we've already processed something or experienced something. And I think that one of the key things with retrogrades is it's not just about revising and reviewing, though of course that can be a major component of a retrograde, especially a Mercury retrograde. But Mercury is about the mind and thoughts and thinking. And so, yes, of course, it's about rethinking things. Whereas Venus retrograde is about Venus's symbols. So Venus is a symbol of relationships, love, beauty, money, sex, self-worth. And so rethinking and revisiting these topics can be a component of this. And a retrograde is an intensification of an energy, and it's also an introspective symbol too. So it's not necessarily about going back into the past, though that could be a part of your introspection process, but it's really about bringing your awareness, your point of focus inward versus outward. And so this could look like having an introspective focus and really looking at your relationship to love, money, sexuality, to experiences of self-worth and value, and looking at new ways of having a relationship to those things in your life. And so I want us to think about it that way, as It's less about like reviewing and going back on relationships and though that could be a component, but it's really about directing our focus inward and heightening our attention to this area because especially around Leo, because the nature of the retrograde is that Venus will be in this sign, in the sign of Leo, for longer than it normally would. And so there's a heightened kind of like an exclamation point, or like really sitting with this material, this Leo, Venus and Leo symbol. So we can think of, to sort of ground Venus to Venus's symbolism, we can think of 3 core components of Venus. This is money, love, and self-worth. And I think it's helpful to contextualize it in these 3 sort of chunks because these topics are all interwoven and interconnected in our society. So Venus's symbolism is around our relationships, our ability to connect, our ability to love, our attraction or repulsion against something, and what draws us in versus moves us away. Venus is also about our finances, our money, the money that we make, the money that we spend, and the value system upon which we rest, where you know, our values inform how it is that we spend our money, how it is that we make our money. And at a deeper level, this is connected to self-worth. So Venus as a planet in astrology is very connected to how we feel valuable as human beings, as individuals, what we feel that we have to bring and to offer, and our own sense of inner value. And not even like that we have something to offer, but the innate feeling of feeling valuable simply by existing, and feeling lovable and feeling attractive. And all of this is very interconnected. These topics tend to sort of mesh and blend together. And we see that in our current culture where the marketing, especially towards women, but all humans, marketing tends to use our insecurities in order to sell product. And so we spend our money oftentimes on things that we think will make us feel more beautiful, more valuable, and more desirable. And, sometimes that's the case. Sometimes that works, sometimes not so much. And it's very different for each person on how that works. But there's this really interesting connection on our how we feel about ourselves, for better or worse, is a motivator on how we use our resources, how we use our money. And I've been interestingly revisiting some of Esther Perel's work, the psychotherapist who really works with intimacy, relationships, and the balance between closeness and intimacy and desire. And there's a lot of Venus in this whole equation, where she talks about the element of desire and feeling desirable, and that is so important in our lives, and that's a core piece of relationship, is not just desiring the partner or partners, but feeling desirable yourself, and desiring your own self as well. So Venus is really connected to all of these themes. And when we have Venus in the sign of Leo, Leo is a sign of passion, excitement. It's about like really moving towards what it is that you're instinctually and intuitively drawn toward. Leo is a fixed fire sign. So fire signs are about passion, they're about intuition, they're about excitement and drive. And the ripple effect, when the fire gets fed, it grows and it becomes bigger. It can also burn out. It can also have too much thrown on it, and then that dims down the fire. So there's a lot of there's a lot of like there's a lot of passion here with Venus and Leo. And Leo is also a fixed sign. So fixed signs are about developing something. They're about rooting into what is existing. And when we have Venus here, there's an emphasis on our relationship to money and love and self-worth, and what will stoke that fire for us, what will bring us more energy and life and enthusiasm and even joy and happiness too. I mean, Venus is really about pleasure and enjoyment and happiness. And these are things that I think can also get put on the back burner too. When we are trying to do life and work and be successful or raise a family or care for others, it can feel almost selfish sometimes. And I think that this ties in with the self-worth as well, in that Venus reminds us that our pleasure and our joy is essential to our life force, to our vitality. And this is also a symbol of Leo. Leo is ruled by the sun, and the sun is a symbol of our soul and our spirit, and that inner vitality, that inner life spark. And so it's really sweet here, the way that Venus is coming in to nurture that, to ask us to think about and to look at the things that bring us joy, that bring us pleasure, that make us feel closer to ourselves, that make us feel closer to others. And this is also a fantastic time to explore the ways in which you feel any sense of insecurity, and why that may be, and how that may be, and to explore the places where you feel worthy, unworthy, and where there is a desire for more. I think that's a big piece here, is that Venus is about desire. And we can, so I want to say also that 8 years is an important time frame for Venus whenever we're talking about Venus, because Venus has an 8-year cycle, in the way that the moon has a 28.5-day cycle, Saturn has a 28-year cycle, Venus has an 8-year cycle. So the last time that Venus was retrograde in Leo at this point was July through September of 2015. So 8 years ago, summer-ish of 2015, is when Venus was at this exact spot that it is now. And so that can also be interesting to look back to, and to see what kind of themes, especially around love and relationship and money and beauty and enjoyment, what was happening in your life then. And it's not always like a one-to-one linear equation. Sometimes there's a very direct correlation, and sometimes it's more subtle. So just something to think about and to notice what was coming up. What do you remember about that time period? And I'll put in the description box below the other Venus retrograde periods that have happened before then. And then we can also look at this in, we can make this more personal. So we're all experiencing Venus retrograde in Leo during these months. And we can make this more personal by looking at where this is happening in relation to our birth chart, the house that Venus is in. So this means, in this case, the house that is Leo in your chart, which house is ruled by Leo. And that house, that area of life, is receiving Venusian energy. So we like this because Venus brings attraction and joy and pleasure. And it's kind of like infusing that area of life with all of the Venusian beauty. And it's highlighting a need to bring more joy and pleasure, and maybe even looking at like insecurities, especially around self-esteem and self-worth as well in that area of life. Now we also look at, oh, and I do want to say too, for folks who have a fixed rising sign, I've noticed that this is going to be more dramatic too. So if you have your rising sign is Leo or Aquarius or Taurus or Scorpio, those are the fixed signs, this is going to be more prominent in your life because it is activating one of the angular houses. And those houses are more about the external structure of our lives. And so whenever we have a transit there, it tends to be more emphasized in a more practical way, and we see it more and we experience it more directly. And that's also not to say that I think that any house that Venus is moving through, it's always really helpful to look at what that transit is looking like. So other things that I want to say about this are that, yes, we look at the aspects that Venus would be making to any personal planets that you have. So that would be, I don't want to get too complicated in this video, but any aspects that are maybe, I would say, within 5 to 10 degrees, that is Venus connecting in and activating that particular planet. So let's say it's Venus making an aspect to your moon. Moon is about our internal nature and our internal world, our experiences in childhood, our experiences of attachment and bonding with other people. So like really emphasizing the relational part of this. Versus Venus aspecting, let's say, your Mercury. That's going to be bringing the Venusian themes more into communication and thought process. And I would even venture to say, like, maybe even your spiritual practice, if you have an active spiritual practice as well. That to say that that's going to, when we look at what planets Venus is aspecting, Venus retrograde, it's going to tell us more about what it's activating in you, in your life. And now, of course, I think the most important thing is what is happening in your life now that is already sort of primed for a Venus retrograde experience. So, what's happening right now around your relationships, around your finances, around your experience of self-worth and self-esteem? Are there things that have already been sort of like coming up that, and it doesn't have to be extreme or overt. I think that sometimes the more subtle things, we notice the subtle things in the very beginning before they start to become more dramatic and more conscious. So yeah, like what I think the biggest thing is like, what have you been thinking about as I'm talking about this? What in your life has been coming into your mind? Particularly, when we think of Venus, we think of romantic relationships. And so, are you in a romantic relationship? Do you want to be? What's happening there? But also, Venus is also relationships with an S, not just romantic, but all manner of relationships and how we connect and how we feel connected with others and what draws us to others. And the last piece that I want to say about this too, that is more collective, is that this Venus retrograde is connecting to both Jupiter and Uranus in the sky. So Jupiter and Uranus are in Taurus. So Venus will be squaring Jupiter, Uranus during this retrograde period. So I really like this because it's about expansion and growth, and there's kind of like this exciting and unexpected sort of quality to it. Now, Venus square Uranus, yes, can feel destabilizing because Uranus is about change. It's about sudden, rapid change and wanting to really feel free. And I think those are themes that will come up for all of us as well, is the desire to be free, to feel like you have your own individualistic integrity and authenticity, that you can be yourself, you can be your own unique individual self in relationships. And maybe that's even something to wrestle with, like how to do that. What does that look like? How do you be who you are in relationship and not lose yourself, but also stay connected at the same time? And Jupiter brings in some benefic and like social grace here. Jupiter opens up new possibilities. It helps us to say yes to things. It helps us to expand our capacity for growth, for reinvention. And Jupiter is one of the most benefic planets. Jupiter and Venus are the benefic planets. And so, yes, it's a square aspect, so there's a bit of tension there. And again, it may be sort of like figuring out what works for you and how to be in relationship, how to have a healthy relationship to money, how to cultivate a sense of self-worth when maybe you're in a challenging situation, and how to integrate those energies, how to feel free and connected at the same time. So those are themes that we're experiencing again over this Venus retrograde in Leo from July 22nd through September 3rd. And yeah, I'm wishing you a really easeful process. I would love to hear how you're doing, and if this resonates with you, and what's happening in your life now that you're like really feeling this come in. And I think the other piece of this too is that because Venus is square Uranus, there's a bit of like not really knowing what this period is going to be like. It's sort of like a surprise, a pleasant surprise. And so I think that's the other piece of this too, is that Uranus reminds us that we don't know, that we don't know what we don't know. And that the more that we can be flexible and embrace the change and stay rooted and grounded in ourselves as much as possible while allowing to kind of go with that flow, that's going to bring in the most joy. So I am wishing you a most joyful process. Also a reminder that I am a psychotherapist and astrologer. And so if you are like really wanting to dig into this more, if you resonate with me and my work, of course, we've talked about Venus being a symbol of relationships. If that's something that you want to bring some healing to, I would love to hear from you. I offer psychotherapy as well as individual astrology sessions. Sending you lots of love, and I will see you soon. Bye.